Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about why I think that being outside is good for you and good for the planet. So now, of course, I understand that camping out on a February night is not necessarily everyone's thing, and also that I'm a little bit biased because I've been growing up and being exposed to the outdoors from a very young age. And maybe some of the things that I'll be mentioning in my talk are not very possible with your cultural background. But still, I'd be very grateful if you can give me the attention, and maybe there are some things that you can pick up in my talk. So life can be very busy, especially here at RCN. And many people complain about the remoteness that we live in. We live by the fjord, in the mountains. There's no real civilization anywhere close to us. But I think that the outdoors, and especially the forest around us, also give us a lot of opportunities. When I'm stressed or when I feel overwhelmed with everything, I like to go into the forest and hug a tree. And I don't really know why hugging trees has such a hippie stigma, because it is really the most therapeutic thing that you can do. Trees are rooted into the ground, and when you hug a tree, that rootedness just goes over into you. Trees give you stability and steadiness. Outside, you feel accepted, because outside, there's no one to judge you. There's no one that cares about your style that you have today, or there's no one that judges your awkward behavior. Also, outside, there are no mirrors. So the only reflection that you'll get outside is the image when you look down into a puddle, the distorted image of the puddle. So that allows for the real reflection to happen inside. And I think that's especially important in today's world where we're all using so much social media, and it's always about posting the picture of the best angle of yourself to impress others. But that's not possible outside, and I think therefore a huge pressure is taken off our shoulders. There's also plenty of scientific research why being outside is good for you. For example, eye doctors are more and more arguing that in order for our eyesight to develop properly, we need to see the horizon for quite a substantial amount of our time. And because our lives are more and more focused around screens, and especially children spend so much time in front of their phones, iPads, or computers, nearsightedness is becoming more and more frequent. And that nearsightedness then leads to headaches and to a worse mental health. Also, the color green has a very good effect on our mental health. On a very basic natural level, green stands for water. Water stands for that there's no risk of famine, which then in the end means that we don't have to worry because we have water and food, which are our most basic natural needs. So the color green, which is obviously the most predominant color outside, indicates balance. It gives us balance and leaves us in a calm and peaceful state. So when you work with being outside professionally, it goes under the name of wilderness education. And the main idea of wilderness education is to be outside without any time frame. Because even when you go on a hike that goes over several days, you still usually have a quite strict time frame. You're like, yes, we have to get these 15 kilometers done today, or we have to reach that cabin by a certain time. So a friend of mine works with wilderness education, and she especially works with children that are said to be non-educatable, meaning they don't function in a normal classroom environment. So what she does is that she goes outside with these children, and as a mentor, she triggers their curiosity. She tries to bring back the curiosity that children usually have, naturally. And she never gives any answers, she only provides further questions. So that's when the invisible learning happens, the learning that happens without a teacher telling you what you're supposed to know. And this invisible learning really becomes clear with a story that she told me. So she told me that she was out in the forest with a group of kids, and they were building something. And all of a sudden, one of the kids discovered a cave. So everyone went to the cave, because what's in the cave? Who lives in the cave? Is there anyone living there right now? And then that led to thinking about what animals actually live in caves, what animals live on trees, what animals hibernate in the winter. Until all of a sudden, one of the children was like, wait a second. No one can actually be living here right now because there's a spider web in front of the cave. And then after that day, the kids told their parents that they had a lot of fun, but they didn't really learn anything.
But that's where the actual invisible learning happens, the learning where you learn from your own experience and not necessarily from a teacher. So being outside is all about seeing and interpreting the events that happen outside. I was outside in the forest a while ago with one of these outdoor wilderness education mentors. And we were in an area where there's a high bear activity. There's lots of bears around. And that's very scary for me because I grew up in the city in Germany and there's not really any bears. So I don't know how to act around bears. But he said that I don't have to worry because the birds will tell him when a bear is approaching. That really doesn't make any sense to me because how is a bird going to tell me when there's a bear? But he has had so much experience outside that he can interpret the bird song to tell him when birds are approaching. So of course, I understand that that's not very applicable to everyone because not everyone lives in the forest and has to be worried about a bear coming around the corner at all times. But what it really comes down to is rediscovering our senses and the awareness of what's happening around us. And I think that's especially important in the time that we live in, where there's not really that sense of time and distance anymore. Because really, there's no such big difference of me having a conversation with you guys right now or me Skyping my friend who lives in Canada over Skype. So being outside brings us back to reality, and it brings us back to the connection to ourselves. And it also teaches us to listen to our gut feeling and intuition. Because outside, you're actually exposed to real fear. If you have to climb a tree, it's all about your intuition. You have to listen to yourself in order to judge if you can take on climbing that tree or if it's too dangerous. But if you just stay inside and, for example, watch horror movies, yes, you experience fear, but you're not actually in danger. So what all this comes down to, I think, is probably the most important point in my talk, is that being outside teaches us to have trust in ourselves. Because if you know that you can trust your senses, and if you know that you can trust your intuition, you will have much more confidence in yourself. And you'll be able to go with your own way and not necessarily have to compare yourself to others or go with the mainstream. I've experienced that during my time here at RCN. Because before coming, I was quite self-conscious about my ideas. I never knew if they were worth it or if they were good enough, if they could actually work out. But then last year, I was part of the Outdoor Leadership Program, where we were gradually trained to be outside and navigate our way outside by ourselves or in small groups. So by the end, we were dropped off pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and we had to find our way back with a map and the compass. And then here in Norway, where there's no one in a large radius to ask, you just have to rely on your own judgment. You have to decide in what direction to go in order to reach your goal. And there's no one that's going to tell you, oh, wait, you're going the wrong direction. So it's your judgment that counts to keep you safe and get you where you want to go. And when you've experienced that and it worked out, that gives you so much more trust in yourself. So when you're outside and you're observing and you try to interpret the signs of nature, you will realize that there is infinite wisdom outside. And that makes you realize what actually is your place in this entire system that's our planet. And it leaves you with a feeling of being very small. And that feeling of being small leads to a big gratitude. Because when you're outdoors, you experience how everything is connected and how everything is needed for the system to function. So when you've experienced that, and for example, you're drinking a glass of milk, you'll realize that yes, the rain was necessary, something that we like to complain a lot, especially here at RCN. You'll realize that the cow was necessary to produce the milk. You will realize that the truck driver is necessary to get the milk from the cow to you. And just, you will have a much bigger gratitude for the entire process. So when you have that awareness of how everything is connected, you will also realize what we're taking from the planet. So being outside teaches us to go back to ourselves. It gives us trust, and it puts our existence into perspective,
and makes us aware of our surroundings. And that leads me to my second part of why being outside is not only good for you, but also good for the Earth. Climate change is happening. It's an undeniable fact. On this slide, you can see how the temperature has increased significantly over the last decades. This trend is also visible when looking at the Earth Overshoot Day. The Earth Overshoot Day is a day in the year where we've used up all of Earth's resources for that year. So in 1987, Earth Overshoot Day was in December 19th. So even then, we weren't sustainable, but it wasn't that bad. But since then, to last year, 2017, the Earth Overshoot Day has moved to 2nd of August. So right now, we're almost using the resources of 2 planets to sustain our lifestyle. And we have to act now if we want to minimize the impact that climate change is going to have on our planet, or is having on our planet right now already. And I think that the first step and the most efficient and effective way to do this is to spend time outside. 3 of the main contributors to climate change are the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and farming activity. And for a number of reasons, I believe that people that spend time outside contribute less to these than people who don't. So first of all, you can only protect what you know. And that becomes clear on a very personal level. If the same thing happens to your best friend or to a stranger, you will of course care more about your best friend than about the stranger. So only if you understand the beauty that's out there in nature and on our planet Earth, will you be able to also understand what harm we're doing to it at the moment. Also, when you spend timeless moments outside, and you are able to appreciate the small details, you will feel less of a need for rushed events. You will feel less of a need to jet around the world or get places really fast. Maybe you'll rather take the time and go by bike or by foot instead of taking the car. Also, when you've spent a lot of time outside, you will realize that you'll find your existential needs outside, and that will lead to you consuming less, because actually maybe you'll realize that you don't need that new TV or that new phone, because maybe that's not what it's about. And so all these things leads to having more awareness of the resources that we're using, and ultimately to using less of our planet's resources. And I believe that this is the only way to change our mindset, in which we have to do right now to protect our planet. So being outside brings us back to ourselves. It makes us reconnect with our senses and intuition. It teaches us to have trust in ourselves and love ourselves more. And it puts our existence into perspective. It makes us aware that we need to protect what gives us life. So of course, this is a very individual perspective, and I can only speak for myself. But I have experienced that being outside has only given me good and positive things. So I ask you, even if it's not your cultural background, to just give it a try. Spend some more timeless moments outside and see what the outdoors will do to you. Thank you.